Chapter 8. Passing Strangers. The final months of school passed in a blur of events and lingering thoughts. Since that first real conversation with Mina outside the stadium, Lucas had carried the memory like a spark in his chest, warming him through the days. It wasn't just admiration anymore, it was the first glimpse of connection he had craved for so long. Every time he thought of her, he felt more grounded, more certain that he was no longer the boy waiting on the sidelines of his own life. But that certainty carried a restless undercurrent. He wanted to see her again, to understand why this pull toward her felt so undeniable. He kept attending her track meets, standing in the crowd with Thomas, watching her race with quiet awe. Mina became more than an athlete to him. She was a symbol of the life he wanted, one where strength and vulnerability could coexist. Another encounter. One afternoon, after a smaller meet, Lucas and Thomas spotted Mina outside the stadium. The evening sun cast a golden glow, catching the soft glimmer of sweat on her brow. She looked exhausted but radiant, the kind of tired that comes from doing something you love. "Hey, Mina!" Thomas called, waving. Mina turned, her eyes lighting up with recognition. "Thomas, Lucas!" she greeted warmly, her smile making Lucas's chest tighten. "You were incredible again," Lucas said, hoping his voice didn't give away the nerves churning inside him. Mina grinned playfully. "Thanks. I saw you two out there. Starting to think you're my lucky charm, Lucas." The words, light and teasing, carried more weight for Lucas than she could have imagined. He laughed, rubbing the back of his neck awkwardly. "I'll take credit if you keep breaking records." They stood together, exchanging easy conversation about the race, school, and weekend plans. It was nothing serious, just small talk, but every moment with her felt significant to Lucas. Attending these meets had become more than just watching her win. It was his way of stepping closer to the life he wanted, a life where she belonged. "I'm glad we got to chat," Mina said with a glance toward her vehicle pod, waiting by the curb. Her butler, standing nearby, gave a subtle nod, signaling it was time to leave. Lucas swallowed the familiar ache of separation. Even in moments like this, when Mina seemed so close, her world felt just out of reach. "See you at the next one?" she asked, stepping toward the pod. "Yeah," Lucas answered, trying to sound casual. "You can count on it." She smiled, a flicker of regret in her eyes. "Take care, Lucas." With that, she climbed into the pod. The door slid shut with a soft click, and Lucas stood watching as the vehicle glided away, carrying Mina back into her world, a world that felt both familiar and distant. Graduation day. Graduation came and went without fanfare for Lucas. The ceremony felt like a formality, a blur of speeches and polite applause. His foster family didn't attend, sending only a brief message later that night. "Congrats, good luck out there." Thomas's celebration, by contrast, was filled with joy and noise. Friends, family, and excited conversations surrounded him. He pulled Lucas into the crowd with his usual enthusiasm. "We made it!" Thomas grinned, slinging an arm over Lucas's shoulders. "Yeah," Lucas said, managing a small smile. But deep down, the end of school felt more like a void than a victory. He had survived, but now what? Thomas seemed to sense his unease and nudged him with a grin. "Come on, man. Don't be like that. You've got options. You just need to figure out what's next." Lucas shrugged. He knew Thomas was right, but the future ahead felt murky and uncertain. He had spent most of his life drifting, surviving day to day, but suddenly that no longer felt like enough. Mina's graduation. Across town, Mina's graduation was everything Lucas's wasn't. Grand, public, and filled with excitement. Reporters clustered by the stage, and her family stood by with pride, posing for photos and giving interviews. Mina smiled for the cameras, her face a mask of effortless poise. Yet beneath the surface, she felt uneasy. The applause, the flashing cameras, and the praise all felt hollow. She was achieving everything she was supposed to, but the path she walked wasn't entirely her own. And that thought lingered, gnawing at the edges of her happiness. When her father clapped her on the shoulder, saying how proud he was, she smiled automatically. But inside, she felt a strange emptiness, as if there were parts of herself she hadn't yet discovered. Parts she wasn't sure her carefully curated life had room for. A new direction. The days after graduation felt like drifting through empty waters for Lucas. His foster family didn't push him to make decisions, content to let him figure things out on his own. But the lack of structure gnawed at him. Each passing day a reminder that he was standing still while the world moved on without him. It was Thomas, as always, who broke through his haze. Over lunch one day, Thomas casually mentioned his plans for the future. "I got accepted into Central Institute," he said, grinning. "Same school Mina's going to. It's the best place out there." Lucas's heart skipped. Mina would be there. He tried to sound indifferent. "That's cool." "You should apply too," Thomas said. "Seriously, man, you'd be great there." That night, Lucas sat at the kitchen table, staring at the blank college application on his tablet. It felt overwhelming, each question a reminder of how little he knew about what he wanted. And then there was the glaring problem. Central Institute wasn't a school for just anyone. It was prestigious, exclusive, and known for taking only the best. Lucas had no connections, no influential family name. The challenge. A week after submitting his application, a response arrived in the form of a politely worded message. Further evaluation required. Lucas wasn't surprised. He hadn't expected to glide in on the first try. The next day, a packet arrived, thick with tests and instructions. These were no ordinary exams. Central Institute's curriculum revolved around the study of magical technologies, complex systems blending ancient magic with cutting-edge science. This meant applicants weren't just tested on raw magical ability, but on how well they understood its applications. Lucas had to complete assessments in fields like arcane physics and magical circuitry theory. One puzzle challenged him to identify a faulty sequence in a power cord diagram, testing his grasp of energy flow and containment. Another required crafting theoretical solutions for integrating magical power cells into public infrastructure. Lucas fumbled at first, unused to such specialized questions, but slowly he found his rhythm. The practical tests came next. In one, Lucas had to recalibrate an unstable crystal lattice, a fundamental power source, using only sparse instructions. Sweat beaded his brow as the glowing lattice flickered dangerously, but his instincts kicked in, and with a careful adjustment, he stabilized the energy field just before it could collapse. The proctors exchanged glances and nodded approvingly. A spark of determination. The final part of the application asked for a personal statement. Describe what drives you to pursue your studies and how your unique experiences will shape your future at Central Institute. Lucas stared at the screen, feeling overwhelmed. What could he say? He wasn't from a prestigious family. He didn't have fancy credentials or noble aspirations. After hours of failed attempts, Lucas closed his eyes, breathing deeply. Then the thought of Mina flickered in his mind. Her relentless drive, the way she carried the weight of expectations without losing herself. Slowly, something clicked inside him. Maybe he didn't need to have all the answers right now. Maybe his desire to grow and connect was enough. He wrote honestly, about feeling lost, about the sparks of connection that had given him hope, and about wanting to learn, not to prove anything to others, but to find himself. In the margin of the form, without thinking, he doodled again. A girl with blonde hair and bright green eyes. When he finished, Lucas stared at the page. He didn't know if he would get in, but for the first time in a long while, he felt ready to try.